Hi, this is Gerald Salenti. It's Wednesday, July 12, 2017, and here are some of today's trends in the news. On the market fronts, everything is up, even gold and oil. But Nikkei and Shanghai just down a little bit. But here in the States, boom, the Trump rally that we said was real when it began continues to boom, even though the anti-Trump rhetoric from the prostitute media continues full blast. So there's a big disconnect over here between the markets and the media. So what happened? Dow jumps to record after Yellen screaming that, we're not going to raise interest rates as fast as we says we were, and we're going to slow it down a little bit and unwind at $4.5 trillion that we took onto our balance sheets so we could give those banksters more money, so we could put more mergers and acquisitions in place, so we could screw the people and keep those interest rates down near zero, so they could do all those stock buybacks and you have no place to put your money in CDs of banks because they'll pay it at in interest rates, but we don't care because we're only here to serve the rich. That's right. So now they say they may not raise interest rates as fast as they yelled before. Yep, it's only a 53% guess that they're going to raise them in December here in the States. And it was 60% before Yellen started.
Bullshit level, DEFCON 5.
And I want to be fair because before we had Bernanke bullshit level, DEFCON 5 as well. So that's what we got here. So gold went up on the possibility that interest rates might not go up so fast. But hey, they raised them over there in Canada today. That's right. First time in 7 years. And now they're up to a big 0.75%. Yep. And of course, there's concern in China that the debt levels of consumers are going way up. And what happens when that housing market goes down? And again, they lowered rates when the oil crisis hit and the prices went down. So oil prices aren't going to go up that much. They went up a little bit today on the news that, the stockpile drawdowns were bigger than anticipated. But that's only temporary as we see it. Emerging markets rally shows cracks. Remember, the higher the interest rates go, the higher the debt levels from all these emerging markets that borrowed those trillions of dollars in dollars, and they have to pay it back as their currencies go lower. So now there's concern because some central banks are raising interest rates that rally that's being fueled by cheap dough may slow. Investors shift out of risky assets as central banks signal rate rises are getting near. The 18th-month rally is emerging markets is losing steam as central banks are winding down the easy money policies. So let's call it all it is. It did nothing to help we the little people of Slavelandia, only to enrich the filthy, fat rich more and more, and the numbers prove it. Again, folks, as Obama used to say, folks, 10 million jobs were created when I was president. And according to the Harvard-Princeton study, 94% of them were temporary work. And 95% of the wealth created went to the 5%. Investors want to see whether central banks, quote, can normalize rates without some economies tipping over the cliff, said Christian Lawrence, senior market strategist at Robobank. And also, in talking about Yellen and what they've been selling about the interest rates, she also said that balance sheet reduction and rate increases would be gradual and that rates would not have to rise as much to get to neutral in previous decades. So there you got it. They're going to raise them a little bit, and we, the little people, will have nowhere to put our dough to get any return. So she's changed her tune. But the one tune we keep playing over and over again, it's one of your top trends for 2017. Look at it. Buy and sell China. And there's cheap dough everywhere. China Investment Bank buys stake in ETF provider Crane. Beijing-based China International Capital Corp., one of the country's largest investment banks, agreed to acquire a 50.1 stake in Crane Funds Advisors, LLC, a New York-based ETF provider. Get it? A majority. But you can't buy the majority if you buy it in China. They got over 50%. When you buy in China, you get the 49%. And Chinese investment bank buys, right? And you know where a lot of this dough is coming from? The Chinese government. Watch out. China, one of your top trends of 2017, buy and sell China, now has sights on chip production. China plans to spend up to $108 billion on its own chip-making industry. China consumes almost half the world's chips, mostly for exported electronics, but it makes less than 10% of those. The government is showering money on the country's chip makers, while the United States showers bombs on innocent peoples. That's the difference. The business of China is clearly business, while the business of America is war. Hey, we're coming up to 16 years in Afghanistan, $2.4 trillion spent, and that's all we got to show for it. Of course, besides the people, as China is showering money on the country's chip makers, we've been showering bombs on the innocent Afghan people. Trio of exchange-traded funds bet on decline of brick-and-mortar chains. Very interesting story. Brick-and-mortar is not dead. The overexpansion is dead, and the consolidation that has taken individuality and long lines of different aspects of what to buy rather than just a few SKUs, so no diversity in what you're buying, that's what's killing the industry. Also, the whole brand thing is starting to lose its cachet, particularly among the millennials who have no cachet to spend. So when we look at this, this is on-trendpreneur opportunities, even to the extent where you're seeing a new company pop up called Brandless. Again, it goes back to dollar stores. No such thing existed when I was a kid. Yeah, they had 5 and 10 cent stores, but there were a lot of stuff that you could buy for a lot more. You go to a dollar store, it's $1. Brandless is going 2 notches up against the dollar store, online $3, but different than the dollar store, quality products. Hey, you want toothpaste without that fluoride? You can get it from Brandless. On-trendpreneur opportunities. More and more of them, more and more opportunities to take advantage of, and you find them in the Trends Journal. We are the source for on-trendpreneur opportunities. We'll keep showing them to you, finding them for you, and forecasting them for you. Again, PepsiCo uses higher prices to grow. The company's been able to achieve sales growth by raising prices, but they fear sending customers to competitors selling cheaper snacks and drinks. That's exactly what we're going to see more and more of. You're seeing it already with the decline of big brands in the grocery retail sector. People are going to brand lists or the company's brand where they're buying it. So this is a dangerous territory they're moving into. And again, in keeping with the cheap money, janitorial firm ABM to acquire rival GCA for $1.25 billion in cash and stocks, according to people familiar with the matter. Again, the cheap money, this is what it's fueling. Not growth for we the little people, only for the bigs. On to some other stories. Yes, Trump. He was on that campaign trail talking about big is bad. He went out and said that he would kill AT&T proposed acquisitions of Time Warner and unwind Comcast 2011 purchase of NBC Universal. He said about the Time Warner Union, AT&T Time Warner Union, too much concentration of power in the hands of too few, and accused Comcast of trying to tell voters what to think and what to do. He said about Amazon, a huge antitrust problem. Well, you know what that was.
Oh, come on now. That ain't even bullshit. That's horse shit.
That's all it was, because now we're seeing the policies in place and the direction things are taking. Just another man lying his way into office. Here we go, folks. ProPublica identified 71 appointees in the Trump administration, including 28 with potential conflicts through interviews, public records, and documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. Appointees are reviewing rules their previous employers sought to weaken or kill, and at least 2 may be positioned to profit in certain regulations if they are undone. The deep industry connections of Trump's deregulation team. Yeah, he drained the swamp and filled it with just more swamp creatures. And speaking of which, Iraq begins to rebuild a shattered Mosul. Look at these photos of the shattered Mosul. Nothing left. This insanity of America's military strategy, which merely means leveling and killing anything in its way. Here are the facts. These are the photos. Imagine if the Russians did this in Aleppo. Oh boy, with the New York Slimers, or the New York Timers, as they prefer to call themselves, the toilet paper of record, showed photos like they did of Aleppo, of all the people that were killed when the Russians and Syrians were trying to free the place of ISIS. Parts of the western side of the city were flattened in the fight to oust the Islamic State. Yep. In nearly 9 months of fighting, they displaced more than 800,000 residents. Half of the city were largely flattened. Nearly every building on the western side of Mosul was completely destroyed. This is called a military strategy. Hey, it worked great with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, didn't it? Yeah. And how about what they did over there in Germany? Ah, yes, beautiful Dresden, destroyed for no reason. This is sickness. This military strategy has not worked. The wars continue, building it up again in Afghanistan, destroying Syria, destroying Iraq. Oh, guess what? New news. More U.S. troops going into Libya. Yay! Brought to you by Obama, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner that destroyed the most prosperous nation in Africa. And now it's a hellhole, out of control. And the people they supported, they're the ones that are destroying Syria and in Iraq. That's right. But here's some good news, folks. That doesn't make the CNN Cartoon News Network as they're talking about Donald Trump Jr. talking to the Russians, and the Russians about this and the Russians about that. Nor MSNBC or Fox or any of them. Amnesty International, U.S.-backed coalition violated international law in Mosul, killing over 5,000 people. The report centered on the massive civilian death toll, particularly escalating as the battle moved to western Mosul, which we just showed was flattened, saying they used unnecessary amounts of force and indiscriminate targeting. Amnesty officials criticized the use of explosive weapons with no precision in attacks on densely populated parts of Mosul that were known to be filled with civilians. Again, nearly 6,000 people were killed. The United States says only a few hundred were killed. And according to the Pentagon official, General Stephen Townsend, he said that the Amnesty International report is not true. They're not in, quote, a position of authority, and they have no right to make such statements about war crimes in the first place. And General Townsend said, the United States used, quote, extraordinary care. And he said that the military venture in Mosul was the most precise ever in the history of the human race. Yeah, let's look at this precise nature of war in the history of the human race. You know what that is. Townsend, it's precisely...
Warning, warning, bullshit alert.
You got it. Another day, more bullshit. You name the government agency, they got the lines for you. From the military, to the EPA, to the FDA, to the FU. That's right. This is Gerald Salenti, and that's some of today's trends in the news.